Hola y bienvenidos to another episode of our podcast called Healing Juntas. My name is Irene Segura and I am the host. Before we get started today, I want to talk about our disclaimers. Again, just a quick reminder that all the information provided in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not substitute professional mental health support, and I encourage you to reach out if you are feeling that is an extra need for you. The National Suicide Hotline, again, is 988. So if you are feeling that is an immediate concern for you, please reach out for support. I want to make sure that you're well taken care of, okay? So, now that we got that out of the way, I want to talk to you guys about this week's episode, which is something we touched on a little bit on the last episode, but it's about communication skills. So I know for a lot of us, communication is really difficult, right? We're not used to effectively communicating. We have never been taught how to communicate in a way that sets the tone, gets our point across, but doesn't either hurt people's feelings or we retreat back into our own. So that kind of leads me into the idea of what is communication and what are the types of communication. So something to note is that communication is not a skill that we're just born with, right? It's something that we have to develop, and it's based on culture and the environment that we're built into. So if, many of us might be from the Hispanic background, the way we communicate is very different from, maybe a Caucasian family or an African American family or just anybody from a different community than ourselves. There might be a lot of overlap and similarities, but we each have our own unique way of communicating within our cultures. And I think that's something to recognize. Um, but essentially, communication breaks down into three different components or three different kind of categories. And the first one is passive communication. So I've noticed a lot of times that, especially in our Hispanic communities, especially with our women, a lot of people fall into the passive communication. They're very, like, there's poor eye contact, they don't really express their own needs or wants. There's definitely like a lack of confidence in what's being said. And a key aspect of passive communication is really that you're prioritizing the needs of others, right? So if you're trying to say something that you need and somebody else says, "Oh, but I need this." Oh, okay, well, I can take the back seat with my needs because you need something more than I do. It's very much there's a complacency of I need to put others before myself with the passive communication style. And that's something that we'll talk about, the pros and cons of each. But yeah, so that's passive communication style. Then there's aggressive communication style. Again, this is more prominent in our Hispanic communities with people that are male identifying. Right? We see a lot of the use of like criticism, humiliation, domination, disrespect. There's a very keen unwillingness to compromise. You speak in a louder, overbearing tone, and then people are easily frustrated. So these are some of the key components that you see in like aggressive communication. Again, I don't want to overgeneralize and say this is just the female or male thing, but this is something that you would find more typically in, you know, somebody that is male presenting or male identifying. So again, just something to keep aware of that, these are some of the styles that we tend to lean to, especially if you're coming from a Hispanic community. Again, that's the polar opposite, right? So we start with passive, this is aggressive. Where we want to be, the ideal version of communication is really what's called assertive communication. So assertive communication emphasizes the importance of both people's needs. We're not prioritizing somebody else over ourselves, but we're also not completely just saying your needs are relevant to me either. This one, it has a couple hallmarkers, and these include like listening without interruption. We want to clearly state our needs and our wants. There's a willingness to compromise, so we come to the table ready to hear other the other person's perspective, but are also willing to meet them in the middle as well. There's a confident tone. You can see this really much in like the body language that we present with, and there's good eye contact. So these again are some of the hallmarkers of good assertive communication. So now that we've talked about like the three of them, let's break it down a little bit further. Again, I want to emphasize none of these are like cookie cutter, like you're going to see these one person over the other, one gender over the other. There are just like some traditional roles that we tend to lean to. Um, Hence, like Marianismo, for those that aren't familiar, it's the expectation that a woman, especially in Hispanic communities, should put the family and everybody else above themselves, right? It's a very traditional roles and expectations. You're the mother, you're the wife, you're the housekeeper, you're the domestic laborer, you're everything to everyone except yourself. So this can tend to lean towards the passive communication style, right? We don't vocalize our needs. We don't say what we want. We're not really setting the tone for how we expect to be treated because we're putting everybody else's needs above our own. In the aggressive category, this tends to lean into the machismo culture, right? For those again that are unaware, machismo culture is really the traditional roles and expectations of males, and this can be very like a hyper masculine presentation, right? The men have to have it all together. They're not allowed to express emotion. They can't have any kind of um, feminine characteristics. They have to be like very overtly masculine, which also tends to lean into the aggressive communication styles, right? What I say goes. We don't question it. You do what I tell you to do. So there's very specific roles that kind of tend to lean with the different communication styles. What we want to do is really strive for the assertive communication on both ends. Um, for those that tend to lean passive, we want to start building up our confidence, start building up the respect for ourselves to say that my wants and my needs are valid just as much as anybody else. And those for that tend to lean on the aggressive communication style is also leading with empathy and understanding that it isn't just what I say goes. The other person very much has a role in what we do and what we say and how things are done. And we want to respect that on both fronts. So when we just come into a situation trying to bulldoze things, we may think we're getting what we want, but it's very ineffective in the long run because people don't want to listen to people that don't care about others, right? They don't want to respect what you have to say if you have no consideration for what they want. So really what we're trying to do is this meet in the middle approach, which is where assertive communication comes in. This is so hard for me. Well, now I'm gonna say I'm a lot better at it, to be fair. But assertive communication was really hard for me because ironically enough, I tended to do both. So when I was a lot younger, passive communication was very much me. Everybody, came before me. Everybody got their wants and their needs met, and I was always in the back seat, and that was fine. Until I got to the point where I had suppressed things so long and so hard that it kind of bubbled over and it became very aggressive in my communication style. I was loud, I was irritated, um, just like my way or the highway. I'm not compromising. You're going to do what I say, kind of thing. And I became very aggressive in my communication. And I realized neither one were very effective for me. It wasn't until I started using boundaries and setting expectations and being more reasonable in my approach that I was like, okay, something has to change. So when I really learned about assertive communication, I was like, oh, this makes sense, right? We want to be firm. We want to be direct. We do not want to leave um, what's called like a um, how do I say it? Room for misinterpretation, right? So we want to be very clear with what we are asking. However, we don't want to be disrespectful. I can tell you, hey, I would really appreciate it if you help me with X, Y, and Z. Passive would be like, well, if you can, it's no big deal. Only if you have a moment. If not, I'll get to it. Don't even worry about it. Actually, don't even worry about it. I'll handle it later. Right? Assertive is like, no, I would really appreciate that help. It means a lot to me if you could help me by doing the dishes or doing whatever. Because I have other things I need to get in, or however you want to phrase it, right? Aggressive might look like, no, you are going to do those dishes. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, you're gonna get them done because I told you they need to get done. We want to be very careful with both of the extremes because both are just not, they're not effective. And it's really difficult to want to listen and to respect somebody that doesn't show respect to others and doesn't show respect to themselves. Again, a lot of our, again, this is no shade to parents, but I wanted to just pose this as an example. Sometimes what we get is these extremes, right? Some parents can be very much, again, no generalizations, but Hispanic communities, right? It's, mom always told us, like, vas a hacer lo que te digo, right? You're gonna do what I say you're gonna do. You're not asking questions. It's not, this isn't up for debate. Like, this wasn't, I always like to think of it as like, um, what mom, dad, grandma, whatever they said, like that was law. There was no negotiation. And don't even think about questioning it because that wasn't your place, right? So it creates a very much like demeaning role in ourselves, like right? You can't question that. You can't. There's no way you would ever, come back with an assertive communication or assertive response because the parents are gods, right? Parents tell you what to do, and parents are the ones that you need to listen to, and no questions, no comments, no concerns. The problem with that is that it creates this sort of narrative that we're not our own people. We don't have our own voices. We can't stand up for ourselves because somebody else is always in control or somebody else is always kind of the leader of the pack. We don't want that. That's not helpful for our kids. It's not helpful for our communities. Same thing with the passive communication styles. Well, we're not voicing our needs. Sometimes the other person has no idea that they're kind of bulldozing or that they might be just taking advantage, that you are just a kind person and you don't have assertive enough communication to let them know, hey, this is my need. I'm feeling overworked. I'm feeling overwhelmed. We don't do that, right? So we just kind of like play in the background and we're like, no, everybody else comes first. But that comes at a cost too. We don't stand up for what we need and we eventually get tired and overwhelmed and we eventually either explode or we just completely shut down. So emphasizing communication in a positive way, again, this assertive communication like style is really, really important. What I want to emphasize is that it's not easy, right? When we've kind of, if you start resonating with any one of these and you find that you're on one of the extreme ends, right? The more assertive, more aggressive or more passive, it can be really, really difficult to move into this assertive communication style. Like I said, I struggled with this for many years and I bounced between different communication styles and I still do. Even as a freaking clinician, even as somebody that's trained in mental health, I have days where I'm like, I cannot literally get my point across without being angry and upset and annoyed. And I'm just aggressive. I'm like, I have to reflect and be like, nope, that wasn't appropriate, right? I have to go and apologize. I have to go and say, hey, that was my bad. I did not check myself. And same thing with the passive. Sometimes I'm so like beat down by life that I don't assertively state my needs, so I retreat into this passive way of communicating, and the people around me have no way to help me, no idea how to support me, because I'm not telling them anything. I'm like, it's fine, I'm fine, nothing's wrong, it's okay, it's no big deal, right? When you start to hear those things, you're becoming very passive in the way we approach things, instead of communicating with our partner, family, whoever it is, and saying, hey, I just had a really bad day today. I need 20 minutes to myself. That's like an assertive statement, right? Or, I would actually really appreciate if you did X for me, because I'm very overwhelmed today and I just need that level of support. Again, we're being assertive. We're not demanding, but we're making it clear that we do need this level of support from the person that we're talking to, we're communicating to. I think now that we've kind of like thoroughly broken down the communication styles, I think it would be, how to say, it would be inappropriate to say that communicating is the only step to positive communication. Another aspect of positive communication is really an active listening phase. So we can talk all day, right? We can speak and speak and speak and speak and speak and communicate effectively and say what we mean and all that good stuff, right? However, if the person on the other end is not actively listening to what we're saying, we're kind of at a standstill. So there's a two-way street when it comes to communication. Yes, we want to assert ourselves in the way we communicate, but the person or the party that we're speaking to also needs to be listening actively to our needs. So what is active listening? The by definition, it says oh God, tongue twisted. Treating listening as an active process rather than a passive one. This means participating in conversation rather than acting as an audience. Active listeners show that they are listening, encourage sharing, and strive to understand the speaker. So the first one, um, we want to show that we are listening. Don't be on your phone. Don't be, looking all over the room. Very much are watching TV, right? These are distractions. If a person is asking for your active attention, we want to put away the distractions. Sit down, maintain good eye contact, show them that you're there with them, right? You're in this conversation and you're not a million miles an hour somewhere else. So showing the person that you're with that you are listening and you're actively engaged with them is super, super important to effective communication. Another thing is encouraging the sharing. So I love a good open-ended question rather than just being like the yes or no's or things like that, or like yeah, things like that. Things we want to encourage is open-ended questions. So, how do you like X? How do you feel when X happens? What do you like about X? Can you tell me more about X? Right? Whatever. Just really facilitating an open dialogue with the person you're communicating with. So I think that is super, super important. Another one, I always use this in couples therapy. Use reflections. So what that means is, in your own words, summarize the person you're talking to's main point. So if somebody's telling me about their day and they told me that Jane and John got in a fight at work and it caused the whole scene at their place of employment, what I want to do is be like, okay, so from my understanding, Jane said that to John and John blew up at that. Am I hearing that right? Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Or you give them the opportunity to correct you. Oh, actually, no, it was John that blew up at Jane because of this, this, and this, not what you were saying. Okay, thank you for clarifying, right? But the reflection is really a tool to make sure you're fully understanding what the person is saying, but it also shows them that you're actively listening. Hey, tell me more. hey, is this what's going on? I want to make sure I'm on the same page as you. So I really super emphasize using reflections because it's super, super key to both of you. You meaning you're understanding what the person is telling you, but to them to let them know that you're listening and you're actively engaged with them. And the last big point is to strive to understand. So make sure you're present with whatever the person is saying. It is totally natural for our brain to kind of run on its own. You may find that you're noticing, while a person's talking, you're like, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. That's normal. It's natural. Don't be upset with yourself about it. Just gently bring your attention back to the conversation. And don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm so sorry. I kind of spaced out for a second and I missed that part. Do you mind repeating that for me? It's not rude. It's not disrespectful. It's showing the person that, hey, I'm a human. My bad. My brain's all over the place right now. Do you mind just saying it one more time for me? Um, so again, like I said, don't be afraid to show people that it's you're not on 100% all the time. You're not going to be a perfect active listener all the time. That's perfectly fine. Just be open about it. And the last big thing under that same category is listening with an open mind. There are going to be times where what your person has to say, whether this is partner, family, whoever it is that you're talking to, you don't agree with. You may not agree with them at all. You may be on polar opposite sides of the spectrum. That is okay. Acknowledge that. Be present with the discomfort that may arise with having a conversation about a topic that might be triggering for you. However, you want to go in with an open mind and never get disrespectful. If you notice that a conversation or a topic is triggering this more, right, like we're moving into like a passive communication or an aggressive communication, right, we're retreating or we're getting activated, that's a good sign for you that we need to either adapt the conversation or we need to take a little bit of a break. That's okay. There are topics that are going to be triggering for us. I want to give you an example, right? I am super involved in the Hispanic community. I always have been. I was raised by my dad's mom, who is from Mexico. My dad is from Mexico. My family on my dad's side is all Mexican. My mom is half white and half Duranguense. However, she was not raised with her dad, so she embraces more of her Caucasian community, right? Her Caucasian ethnicity, right? The thing that's challenging for me, and it's been a conversation between us quite a bit, is that that side of the family feels that I emphasize being Hispanic, and I do. That's the ethnicity I identify with. I don't identify as white, even though I'm 25% white. Um, it's nothing I've ever known. I wasn't raised with them. I didn't grow up with them. I love them, but they're just not the community that I identify with. And one of the big markers of issues we have is political, right? I am very liberal. I am very much of the belief that there is no one that is illegal. There is no, um, I am a huge supporter of LGBTQ plus, the LGBT plus Q. Oh, I'm so sorry, totally butchering that, but you know what I mean. Minority communities, everything and anything. There's hardly anything that I'm not supportive of. I'm a very open-minded person. That does not always tend to be the case with that side of the family. Again, I respect it, and everybody has their own different views, but it has been a point of contention in some of our conversations. And there was one instance where we both got completely out of hand in our conversation and we blew up at each other because of our political views. Um, specifically with my mom's mom. Um, we eventually, talked about it and crushed it, but we got really aggressive really quickly in our communication, and we were no longer actively listening. We were passively listening because all we were doing is barking at each other, right? My views are this, her views are that. We were clashing heads, and it just completely, like, it almost broke our relationship. Luckily, we kind of stepped away from each other for a couple weeks. We came back, excuse me, had a conversation about it, and were able to identify that it was something actually much deeper than politics alone. It was much more in depth and had a much more meaning to her than it did to me. I apologize for not understanding the deeper meaning. She apologized for how she reacted, and we kind of were able to hash it out. But again, it took reflection. It took trying to put ourselves in other people's shoes. We were both still assertive in that I believe one thing, you believe another. I'm not trying to change you, though. I'm not trying to convert you, right? We can have an assertive communication about something. We're both being assertive in our ways of communicating, but we're being open and understanding in the way we're listening to each other. So I just wanted to give you guys that tidbit to hopefully put it all together about like what we're talking about when it comes to the assertive communication and the active listening. I hope it was clear. I tend to ramble sometimes, so I hope that wasn't too confusing or misleading. But yeah, so that's the basics of the two types of, how do I say it? Components of effective communicating. One, it's the way we speak, and two, it's the way we take in information. So striving for assertive communication, but also striving to be an active listener. And again, this is a difficult process. If you are coming from communities and cultures like my own, these are not things that are taught to you. It's not the way we often communicate with each other. So building that little muscle in our mind to say, hey, we can change the way we communicate, but it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. We're going to mess up quite a bit, and that's okay. It's all part of the journey. Like I said, I am an actual professional mental health clinician, and I mess up on this all the time. There are times that I'm like scrolling on my phone, and I'm being a very passive listener. I'm not engaging with the person I'm listening to, especially as this happens with my husband a lot. Sometimes I'll be like, you know what, my bad, because he'll call me out. He's like, hey, you're not listening to me. You're not like paying attention to me. Like, what's going on? And it's often completely unconscious because I work 3 jobs. So I'll be like working, and I'm trying to listen to him, right? Trying to multitask. And I have to realize, oh no, like my bad. I'm not giving you my active listening skills, right? I'm not being present with you. So I have to take a step back and recognize, hey, that's my bad. Can you give me 2 minutes? I'm gonna finish up work, then I'm gonna put the phone down, and we're gonna have a conversation about this. And then I sit there and I listen. Phones are off. Phones are out of the way. TV is off. Right? We want to really emphasize this moment between me and my husband, or me and my partner, or whoever you're talking to, versus just like, yeah, okay, I hear you. Oh, that sucks, right? Like the generic responses. Try to really be present with the person that you're talking to. But yeah, so hopefully that was interesting or helpful for you guys. If you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to reach out as always. I also wanted to just give a brief thank you for the listeners that have been listening to me and that are offering feedback and comments. And also being understanding that I'm trying to put out podcasts on a bi-weekly schedule. However, for those that know me, know that I suffer from a chronic migraine condition. I'll be talking about that more in depth in another podcast episode, what it's like living with a chronic illness and all that stuff. But it does affect me quite intensely, and it makes it really difficult to do these recordings when I'm in pain or when I have light sensitivity or when I'm just downright nauseous, right? Things like that. So I really want to say how much I appreciate you guys for listening in and being kind and understanding that sometimes I have to be very flexible when I post these podcast episodes. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all your love, kindness, and support. And I will see you on the next one. Bye.